It's hard to stay consistent when you don't trust yourself anymore. You have started and stopped so many times that every time you try again, you have this voice at the back of your head saying, right, there's no point. You're not going to follow through anyways. So, in this video, I want to talk about how to build your consistency back after you have failed over and over and over again. We all have this good intention of improving ourselves or changing some habits or changing some patterns in ourselves. So we set out these tasks, these habits, these things or activities that we want to track with very good intentions. We want to develop a skill, we want to improve ourselves, we want to get in shape or live healthier. And a lot of times, what happens is that sometimes, even a couple of days in, you fall off or you fail at doing one task or you fall short or something comes up and you end up not doing it. And oftentimes you end up doing it and going through this so many times that by the end of it, you start to doubt yourself and your ability to actually follow through. You start to, instead of stacking proof of you being somebody who is following through, you now have all this long list of your past failures of all of the things that you started and didn't finish, all the things that you tried to do and you never really followed through, where it's easy to start to question your ability to actually stay consistent. And often it can lead to the point where you start to doubt yourself and your ability to follow through even before you have taken the first step. Also, it's very tiresome because every time that you fail, you have to go through this. It's kind of like you go through this negative emotion spiral because you might start to feel some shame. You might start to feel even like you might be judged by others, especially if you shared with somebody else this new aspiration or resolution that you're working on, and this has been the fifth time that you want to do this or start this and stay consistent with it, and yet again you have failed on day three. So there's a lot of self-judgment and self-criticism that can come with this, and also the sense of shame or that negativity that might start to linger in the background. And it is tiresome to not just go through those negative emotions, but then you have to now gather all this energy to try again and to start again, and all this like start stop kind of process. It never really brings you to momentum where you can start to build things or get in the rhythm and start to actually create that consistency that can over time make it easier to actually follow through with these tasks. It's just the constant stop, fail, go through emotions, and then you have to gather yourself up after you have been just feeling very bad about yourself or beating yourself up. And now you have to gather this motivation to start going again. And then you start going again, and then a couple of days in, you fail again, and you just go through this circle. It is tiresome. It is not easy. It is something that can make you feel like you're not good at consistency, or you might even jump to even further conclusions, like you're lazy or you're a failure, you can never get things right, you will never achieve this. um, it's not hard to go to that place. So what I would recommend you to focus on is to shift the question. So instead of trying to think about how do I become consistent after failing so many times, where now your focus is back again on the failure, think about what is something that I know I can stay consistent in. And also with this backtracking, identify one area. Don't focus on 5, 10, whatever many areas or many things that you want to work on. I know we want to fix everything all at once, but that's not the way it works. Choose one area. And within that area, you want to think about initially maybe like 1 to 3 things that you could do. But also with these things, don't make them too big. Because initially, the point is not to kind of rebuild that pattern of I try to take on too much and then I fail and you go through the whole crash and burn and rebuild again circle. We want to let that go. Instead, think about this is how I look at it, especially when I have fallen off consistency in certain area that I want to then kind of address and get back into, which I have made this mistake plenty of times when I just jump back into it with too much too soon and I crush and burn and I go through the same loop again. So what you want to do is you want to identify what is that area, what is it that you would want to work on, or what would be kind of the vision, the goal that you would want to achieve. And then you want to think about what is the action, what is the step that you could take on a consistent basis that is so small that it feels ridiculous not to do it. Like, for example, if you want to start reading or be more consistent with reading or get back into the habit of reading, instead of saying that every day I need to read 50 pages, start with, I will read 5 pages. And if in a couple of days you see that you're not even doing that, start with this one. Open the book. So every day, all you need to do is open the book. Soon enough, you will start to think, well, I opened it, so I might as well read a page. And then once you start to get, like from there, you can start to kind of build it up. But you need to start with the very, very, very tiny baby steps that you know you will stay consistent regardless of what will come at you in the day. Because the point is not to start consistency with something big. The point is start with something that you will actually be consistent with. You need to build a habit of being consistent instead of continuing with taking on too much, failing and crashing, and doing that whole ritual again. So the goal is to have something you actually know you can be consistent in and use it as a starting point. It's not going to be like that forever. And you might be surprised actually how quickly you can progress with your tolerance, but it needs to start with something small. Because the thing you need to remember is you don't become consistent by doing more. You become consistent by being more consistent. That's literally the point. The biggest results, the biggest growth you gain from consistency. And the only way how you can build the habit of being consistent is by being consistent. So you need to identify something that you are consistent in. And with this, also remember that you actually are consistent. You just might be consistent at the wrong things. You might be consistent with quitting. You might be consistent with negative thoughts. You might be consistent with procrastinating. You're just not consistent with the things that you would want to be consistent with. So it's not even that you're not consistent. You're consistent with the wrong things or the things that are not serving you, and the things that you want to be consistent in, you make them so big that it's hard to actually stay consistent with them, considering the life you're living, or maybe the obligations you might be having, or other things, including your nervous system, that needs to get used to this new pattern that you're trying to build with building this consistency. And also with this, with doing the big things, or trying to make these like 5-hour morning routines and try to rebuild your life and change everything day one, consistency is not about, you don't build it based on the intensity. You build it based on the repetition. You build it through repeating the task that you set out to do for every single day. And then with time, what starts to happen is you actually start to build that trust in yourself. Like good example, when I was doing one winter, I did 90 winter swims in a row. Every single day, I would go to the cold swim spot, and those are very uncomfortable. They don't feel good. They're freezing, and I remember the first few days, as I was approaching the river, I had this question in my mind. I wonder if I'm gonna get in today. I didn't know if I will get in the water today because it was cold, it was uncomfortable, it didn't feel good, it didn't feel warm, and it didn't feel something like something that I would want to do in the moment. But then what happened after a while, I think it was like 1 or 2 weeks, I noticed that as I was approaching the river, I started to think, I wonder how long I'm going to stay in today. So I didn't question my ability to get in the water. It was not a question. I will get in. I just don't know how long it's going to be today. So what happened was I had created enough proof that I say what I do what I say I will do. So as I'm approaching the river first days, I don't have that proof yet. So it's still a question, will I do this or not? But then with me overcoming that inner resistance every time when I would not want to get in and it feels cold and I rather just not do it and I still do it, now the next day that I show up, there's less of that doubt of I have more trust that I actually will go and do it. So I doubt myself less. And with every action that you take, you start to build that confidence in yourself and that trust in yourself that I do what I say I'm going to do. And it doesn't have to be anything big at the beginning. You're still building that trust. It's a muscle. It takes repetition. And with time, the more you do these repetitions, the more you start to trust yourself. And with bigger trust, you start to believe more that you might be able to take on more. And then you can start to add more. And with time, you can build incredible tolerance of doing big things on a consistent basis that at one point you would get exhausted just doing them in a couple of days, but you need to build it up. It's a muscle. So you need to have those repetitions to build that belief. And the more reps you have, the less of that doubt you will have, because that doubt will be replaced with confidence and belief in yourself, because you have all this proof of all the steps you took instead of having proof of all the steps you didn't take or you failed to take or you didn't follow through with. Also, with those past failures, don't look at them as a proof of, or don't future project them as, I failed all these times, so it means that I will fail all these times moving forward. Look at them as something to learn from. Maybe it was the bad time to start to do something. Maybe it was not the priority. Maybe you were not able to be present. Maybe you had something come up that you can actually address and make sure that this time when you attempt to do it again, you have addressed it where it doesn't really cause any issues or throw you off. Where every time that you fail, that's where you can have this learning lesson that you can take with yourself if you choose to. So instead of beating yourself up, stop and analyze what happened. What was the decision that I made? What was it that made me to quit? What was it that got in my way? And then through that, you can learn something that you can take with you as you move forward. That's the point. You learn through every time you fail, if you choose to. You can also choose to have every time as a proof that you're a failure, you can't do this. You can also do that, but it's not going to serve you and it's not going to help you progress better. Also, keep in mind that any moment you can make different decision. If you failed yesterday, it doesn't mean that now you have to continue making that decision. And you can choose today to do it again. It doesn't have to mean anything. You failed. Okay, lesson learned. Do it again. Maybe you might fail again. You probably will. None of us are perfect. And if you fail again, learn the lesson. Do it again. And you will stack, even if there's the other thing to keep in mind with the consistency is a lot of times we have these crashes and it's kind of like we have this expectation not to fail or never to fall off track, which I also had. And what I have learned is that I started to play this game where instead of focusing on the failure or not following through or just messing up the day or not doing the task, I started to focus on making the gap between failure and starting back up again smaller. So initially it might have been a couple of months, and then it started to be 1 month, then it started to be a couple of weeks, then it started to be a couple of days, then it started to be a couple of hours, where now it might sometimes be that it's a couple of minutes or even seconds that I fail and I'm back again. I'm starting over today. I don't need to wait until tomorrow. I can start today. And that's where I think it's just important to keep in mind that failures will happen, but just because you failed, it doesn't mean you can't start over or it has to mean something. There's a lesson there you can take with you. Do some reflections, do some introspection, and just accept that you failed, move on, start over, and keep the momentum going. Also, when it comes to failure, one lesson to keep in mind there is that every time you fail, you could set this goal not to make the same mistake twice. Because a lot of times when we fail, instead of focusing on I failed, it might be very different situation. It might be very different obstacle that got in your way that you can now learn from. You can think of different solutions or different ways how you can either avoid it happening or you can resolve it within the moment as it happens next time, if it happens next time. And that way you're more prepared where when it comes up next time, first of all, it's not a surprise. You have been there, you know this, so now you have a chance to try another approach. It's kind of like this, I usually say about when you play a game. A lot of people might approach this building habits or building consistency in certain areas as they go through this level 1, let's say, and a lot of times you go through these obstacles and you might already fail. Instead of getting to the big dragon that you need to slay at the end, you might actually already fail early in the journey. And a lot of times what people do is they feel like, oh, I failed, like I did all this for nothing. But it's like, no, you didn't. You have walked the path, so you know what's coming. This is not the first time. So you can learn to navigate it better. You can have some new adjustments. You can have some new ideas. Maybe next time I jump to this side instead of to this side. And every time you get this chance to try something new. And with every attempt, you learn something new. And that's how you actually build out this system or this approach that works for you. Because not everything will be working for you or your lifestyle or your rhythm or other obligations you might have in your life. But you can find through this experimentation, you find something that actually works for you. And then with that, after those couple of failures and lessons learned, you will find something that works for you that you can actually stick with. Also, don't try to focus too much on making consistency about this like huge thing. Really, consistency is, if you boil it down to what it is, it's really just about the next decision. What it really matters and what keeps you consistent is this decision right ahead of you that you need to make right now. And making this decision, the right decision that is aligned with your goal or where you're headed. And then once you get to the next decision, doing that again. Making a decision that is aligned with your goal. And then you do the same thing the next decision. It's as simple as that. You don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need to think about all these months or years that you will need to make all these right decisions and you can't mess it up. No, focus on this moment, this day. What are the decisions that I need to make to take the right actions to move me towards where I would want to be? And you want to kind of go both ways. You don't want to think about too far ahead, how far you need to go, but you also don't want to stay stuck on how far you have come, how many times you have done this or how consistent you have stayed. Because really, once you start to focus too much on those two ends, one can start to feel like, oh, I can justify quitting now, or I'm good. I have been consistent for this long. I'm good. Where you can start to now build this habit of not doing it. Or if you start to think too much ahead of how consistent you need to stay to get the result, first of all, you're not keeping in mind that growth doesn't happen this way. It happens this way. So there's some things that you might be missing there, or you might not actually be able to properly predict how quickly or how actually you will progress and what the journey will be like. But also you can start to feel overwhelmed because it can start to feel like a lot to stay consistent with. So instead, focus on this one moment, this one decision, and keep making that one decision. So that's a few lessons on consistency and how to stay more consistent Let me know in the comments, what is one thing that you want to be more consistent in, or you want to develop this habit of consistency, or one area that you would want to work on, and what are some of the steps that you will take to actually build out this vision that you have for this area.